Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lisa Washington Thomas. I am the Director of TANF Technical Assistance and Special Initiatives in the Office of Family Assistance and Administration for Children and Families. And I'm so glad that you are here today to take part in our interest webinar for the Families Are Stronger Together, TANF and Child Welfare Partnering for Prevention Learning Community. And our nickname is FAST. We are excited because we know that there are many different variations of TANF and child welfare collaborations happening in the field, and we wanted to start this learning community to help either build or strengthen new relationships or continue or existing relationships. This is an exciting and unique opportunity for state and tribal TANF child welfare agencies to team to be a part of a community of peers pursuing creative preventative strategies committed to the principle that families are stronger together. Excuse me. TANF has four purposes, statutory purposes, and the first of the four purposes is to provide assistance to needy families so that children can be cared for in their home or the home of relatives. And because of this, TANF can provide economic support to help families seeking better opportunities, especially those at risk of child welfare involvement. And we have looked at many research studies, including that from Chapin Hall, who discussed that reports that children in economically insecure households are 5 times more likely to experience maltreatment and 7 times more likely to experience neglect. And based on that research and others, we are glad to be partnering with our sister agency in the Children's Bureau to help bring together this learning community. So now I would like to turn this over to my colleague from the Children's Bureau, Allison Lowry Palmer, who will also give you welcoming remarks. Allison?
Thank you so much, Lisa. Good afternoon, everyone. As Lisa said, I'm Allison Lowry Palmer, and I'm a senior advisor in the Children's Bureau Office of the Associate Commissioner, Asia E. Schomburg. So on behalf of the Associate Commissioner and our Capacity Division and all of Children's Bureau, I'm really honored to welcome you today to this interest information webinar for FAST Learning Community. Children's Bureau strongly believes that families are stronger together, and our work really centers that concept in all that we do. Preventing child maltreatment and working to keep families together is one of our top priorities, and we're committed to supporting child welfare agencies and tribes as they develop prevention-focused, community-based services that strengthen the protective capabilities of families to keep children safely in their homes. The Family First Prevention Services Act, Family First, as you all know, and the 4E Prevention Program really creates a watershed opportunity to move towards more equitable outcomes for children, youth, and families before they face the devastating consequences of maltreatment and separation. And cross-system collaboration, which we underscore in a lot of our work, including this learning community, is really a critical component of fully leveraging family first prevention programs. So we expect that the learning community will highlight innovative approaches from jurisdictions and tribes to enhance prevention efforts to more effectively support families and to mitigate some of the factors and stressors that place families at risk of child welfare involvement. So we want to take this time to encourage you to make full use of all of the resources that the learning community can provide to help your jurisdiction most effectively leverage that prevention work in order to foster a more equitable, comprehensive framework in support of children, youth, and families. We're confident that working and learning together is the most effective way to address some of the persistent challenges that families face. We encourage you to explore ideas, consider best practices, and as Lisa mentioned, continue to build supportive, meaningful professional connections while doing so. We look forward to your work and thank you in advance for your continued work and future innovation in this space. We're really excited to watch and support you as we work together to continue to make meaningful progress to improve the lives of the children, young people, and families that we serve. Thank you so much, and I will turn it to my colleague, Jeanette.
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Allison. My name is Jeanette Hersick, and I'm the project director for this initiative that's sponsored by the partnership between the Office of Family Assistance and the Children's Bureau. Next slide, please, Casey Gray. What, it's really, before I begin though, I do want to say that there's a very large number of people. There's over 100 people on the call. So we have muted everyone. We will, you can unmute at the end if we have time for questions, but please, as we go through the presentation, we will be monitoring the chat box. So you can put any question up in the chat box as we go through the presentation. We'll try to get to any question that you raised today, but after this presentation, we're going to be sending out not only the availability of the nomination packages, obviously, but also additional information and FAQs about the process. So I just wanted to point that out. But anyway, thanks, Allison and Lisa, for sharing your perspectives on this ACF partnership, and that's what this is really about. This learning community is really this cross-agency partnership, a cross-office partnership, but it's built on a long, 2-decade legacy of OFA sponsored peer learning initiatives. They've been called policy academies and learning communities, and in essence, they are at their core a real transformational TA initiative that is long-term in some ways. It's somewhere between 12 and 18 months. And it involves a variety of different intensive technical assistance opportunity. This one in particular, as you hear, is just like that partnership on the federal level. We are excited about partnerships that are on the state and tribal level around really building collaboration. And this learning community will be for up to 10 state and tribal TANF child welfare and partnership teams. Next slide. Why this? And I think Allison hit on a lot of this, as did Lisa. There's been a lot of recent research. Lisa mentioned Chapin Hall's recent research, really showing promise about a focus on prevention, that even modest economic supports to families can make a real big difference and really keep families out of the child welfare system if they can have family stability and look for better child outcomes with a prevention strategy. Not only though was it a research base, over the last 2 months, OFA and the Children's Bureau have held a series of discussion sessions with both the TANF and child welfare field, invited a number of different professionals in to talk about what they have seen, what they have done, and we've heard from several of them about innovative family stabilization models that they've put in place. But we also heard about some of those challenges around meaningful cross-program data and information sharing, and what could be done for how actually being better focused and being family-centered on that. So based on this was really some of our impetus for change and understanding, like what do we know, what have we heard, that we now, OFA and the Children's Bureau, are introducing, as Lisa said, the Families Are Stronger Together learning community. This will be a 12-month initiative. Oh, next slide, Casey Gray. It really will be about a focus on not only developing, but also expanding TANF and child welfare partnerships in the field. It will be focused on bringing prevention to the forefront and really looking at centering on family well-being. We will look at both family-centered as well as cross-system strategies. And we're hoping that and you'll hear more from our partner on this, John McKay, about a framework for really designing and developing some innovative and new approaches to policy, program, and practice change. Next slide. What will the FAST LC really involve? And Lisa mentioned several of this already. It will be a full 12-month engagement. We'll have each team, there'll be up to 10 teams. Each team will have a dedicated coach who partners with you to help you strategize and build forth your change agenda. You're going to hear more from John in a second on the framework that will be used, which is called Learn, Innovate, and Improve, to really guide your efforts. And then we always bring in faculty and what we call leading thought leaders and experts from the field to really build some knowledge capacity of the teams and hear from some of the research in the field. But it's not just about the access to coaching and expertise and the training, but it's really very much so centered on learning in a community of peers. The three core principles of learning communities are knowledge building, team building, but critical is the peer learning. So we are putting together potentially 2 full group in-person convenings, and where each of these teams will come together first for the initial convening, and I think Johnny will even talk more about this in a minute, a capstone at the end of the meeting. We're looking at a variety of different opportunities for coaches to work with your teams, both not only on site but ongoing in a variety of different virtual methods. And obviously it's building team capacity both through collective TA events as well as individual TA assistance that's offered to each of the sites. With that, John, I'm going to turn it over to you to really kind of focus in on our framework for change and the specifics of this FAST LC.
Great. Thank you so much, Jeanette, and good afternoon or good morning to everyone, depending on what time zone you're joining from. My name is John McKay, and I'm with Mathematica, part of the team supporting this learning community. So I want to share a little bit with you about the framework for change that we're going to use to anchor the work with the sites that ultimately are a part of the FAST LC. For some of you, you may have heard of or be familiar with LI squared, or Learn, Innovate, Improve. For others, it may be brand new. It is meant to be a way to move through the change process. And when we think about collaboration, when we think about forging these kinds of partnerships that can actually lead to prevention for families not becoming involved in the child welfare system, that's a difficult task, right? It's not easy. If it were easy, few of you would probably be here today, but it's challenging and it'll take some work. And so this framework is really meant to guide the process by which we go through change, starting with learning, right? To really move forward with transformative change, not just transactional change, we have to do some work to understand what our motivation is, why that motivation exists, and is there consensus around our motivation for collaboration? We need to take a look at who are the partners and interest holders that need to be at the table to actually create the types of partnerships that can lead to prevention. And we'll need to think about the environment, right? The program, the system, the community, the state, the tribal community environment. What are the factors at play there that will strengthen and be tailwinds in support of our efforts to collaborate? And what are some of those headwinds? What are going to be the challenges and the hindrances, things that will get in our way? And how can we design for and plan proactively to address those? In the innovate phase, we're thinking about what are those research-informed solutions? How do we design things that are culturally responsive, that think about equity and promoting equity? And how do we ensure that whatever we do in terms of collaboration for prevention has the best possible chance of succeeding? Thinking about our theory of change or our roadmap for change. How do we get there and planning that out thoroughly? And then in the improve phase, it's about taking that innovation, that plan for partnership and putting it into action, right? Beginning to implement, but not all at once, full to scale, taking small steps at first to iterate and tweak and learn from, right? We've kind of got to work out the bugs a little bit of implementing such a systemic and a complicated type of solution. So that's what the improve phase is all about, is thinking through how do we sort of road test this in pieces and parts as we build a new partnership for prevention. So what this means is that in partnership with a coaching team, in partnership with the other members of the learning community, you're moving through this process together. You're learning from one another and with one another. You're innovating together and you're working towards sharing your learnings during the improved work with one another and the field. So if you are ultimately part of the FAST LC, this will show up quite a bit. It will be a way for us to just sort of guide and be on the same page as we work together to come up with some really innovative solutions over the year-long initiative. Next slide. So if you're interested in joining the FAST LC, we wanted to say a few things about what would be expected. What are you signing up for? First and foremost, there's a commitment, right? That this is not just sort of a one-off or an ad hoc technical assistance engagement where you say, hey, I need some information about collaboration between TANF and child welfare. This is coming together as a team with your partners, TANF and child welfare together to say, yeah, we are committed to being part of an initiative that will be 12 months. And really, right, hopefully that work continues well past 12 months, but that for the purpose of the learning community, you're committed to being involved, engaged over that 12-month period from September of this year to September of next year, working actively to make progress toward this stronger collaboration and ultimately, right, better outcomes for families. To really help spearhead that, we want to encourage the teams that are a part of this to form what we call an implementation team, right? We're a designated set of people, about 3 to 5 from both TANF and child welfare, that are responsible for spearheading and sustaining that work during and after the FAST LC. This increases the likelihood that there is sustainability because there's a locally designated group to own this work. It's not up to OFA or BLH or Mathematica or the coaches to own that because it would just end next September. This really needs to be something that is locally owned. And so that implementation team, that core group of 3 to 5 people will really spearhead the work and then coordinate with all of the other partners in your state or tribal nation to move it forward. And I would be remiss to say, or to not say, right, that motivation doesn't matter, because it does. We want teams to sign up for this that are highly motivated, that have a vision, or that can formulate a vision, possibly with the help of their coach and with their peers. But being motivated and having some consensus around that vision for prevention and collaboration is huge. And so that's certainly something that we want you to know coming in, is that vision and motivation are key. Next slide. So a little bit more brass tacks. How could we join the FAST LC? As Jeanette mentioned earlier, there will be between 6 and 10, so up to 10 sites selected, a mix of both state partnerships and tribal partnerships. And so to do that, what we'd like to ask you to do is to prepare a 3-page vision plan. So we have some nomination guidance and materials that will be shared and that you can review, and that outlines what we'd like to see included in that vision plan. But we've tried to make this as simple as possible, but still have you walk through the process of thinking about what is our vision and our goals for this initiative if we were to be a part of it. And what are some of the things that we are bringing to the table in terms of a team to get this done? Practically speaking, what is our readiness for this? What organizational capacity do we bring? What commitment do we bring to it? And thinking through those things and hashing it out in a short vision plan will help us get a sense of who is really positioned to move forward. In addition to the vision plan, we also are asking teams to secure a letter of commitment from your leadership. Now, we don't want this to be a hindrance or a barrier, but we do think it's really important for this type of work to have buy-in, commitment, and backing from the highest levels of your organization. So for states, we're looking for a letter of commitment from the commissioner or director's office. For tribes, we're looking for a commitment from the director or the tribal council that signals that, yes, we're behind this, we're committed to this, and we will see it through. So both that 3-page vision plan and that letter of commitment are the 2 pieces that we're asking you to submit by the deadline, which is just a little under a month away. That's Thursday, September 7th at 6 p.m. Eastern Daily Time. So there's an email inbox, which we'll share again shortly, that you submit that to by the deadline. And then we will, in partnership with ACF, both Children's Bureau and OFA, go through a review and evaluation process of all of those self-nominations that have been received. And then we will begin to move forward pretty quickly. Selection notices are slated to go out in mid to late September. And then, as Jeanette mentioned, we are looking to get things going right away. Relationship building site visits between coaches and teams, followed by an initial convening of team representatives in Washington, D.C. in mid-October. So we'll have plenty of time for answering questions you have about this, the process, and whether this might be a good fit for you. Feel free to log those in the chat. For now, though, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Mark, who's going to facilitate a conversation with some learning community alums.
Thanks, John. And again, thanks everyone for taking some of your precious time to join this interest webinar. We thought it would be very helpful for those in the interest webinar to hear about your peers, your colleagues that have participated in a previous one. And the previous, so we have two people today who were active in the previous learning community, the LASER TLC, Leveraging America's Social and Economic Resilience. We have Bianca Bell, who was the team lead for the implementation team from North Dakota, and you see her role, and thank you in North Dakota, and thank you, Bianca, for joining us. We also have with us Elaine Topsky, who was the Tribal TANF Program Director from the Chippewa Cree Tribe of the Rocky Boys Reservation. And so we're going to spend the next couple of moments having them share with you what it was like to be a part of a learning community. So the first thing I wanted to do, and certainly is to hear from Bianca and from Elaine. The first prompt is, first question is, if you could share with folks on the interest webinar some of the biggest benefits that you saw from participating in a learning community. And Bianca, if you could go first.
Absolutely, Mark, and thanks for having me. I think I was just saying before we joined how excited we are to share about our experience and grateful we are to have had the opportunity to work with OFA and the LASER community to really help us understand how to improve our TANF program and to make changes within it. I think the biggest benefit that we had in participating with LASER was really, direct access to expert guidance and resources out in our field. It helped us to really gain new insight and knowledge. The collaborative nature of the program allowed for us to learn from other teams and share best practices. And it really helped us to foster a sense of community and peer support. I really enjoyed, times where we got to go on to our meetings and learn from other states and hear about some of the challenges that they were facing, and really connect with one another and really identify with them on some of the things that they're doing and learn from them. I also really appreciated the structured learning format. I think that was really beneficial for our team because it helped for us to identify, different areas where we could also grow in our own capacity in learning how to implement some of the system changes that we did.
Thank you, Bianca. And Elaine, I'd like you to respond and to the, what the benefits were. And I did want to mention to folks that the LASER TLC that you were a part of was a group of 5 states, 2 counties, and 3 tribes. And the Chippewa Cree Tribe of the Rocky Boys Reservation was one of the 3 tribes. So Elaine, if you could talk about what you saw as the benefits from your active participation in the learning community. You're on mute, Elaine. Elaine, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Good afternoon. Morning's going by really quick. Thank you for allowing me to be part of this webinar today. And we're the Chippewa Cree Tribe located in Montana. For some of us don't know where we are in the country, but we're really close to the Canadian border, so we're far up north. But some of the biggest benefits that we had in participating in TLC is communication. Going in, that was my biggest goal, is a communication, even in our own department, with staff. We come to work and we all go into our offices. So this was one of the biggest benefits, and having everyone join by Zoom from their each workstation. So that was one of the biggest benefits of talking with each other within our own department, and having Brittany and her team guide us through all of those that process. My goal was to make our communication stronger with staff, the families that we work with, our supervisors, the tribal council, and the community. And so we had help in bringing that together, with identifying what our goals were for this time period. So we did that, and I could feel the change in how everybody was very interested in the benefit of communicating with each other was one of the biggest benefits that I can say.
Thanks, Elaine. And I did want to mention that Brittany was the coach. John and Jeanette spoke about coaching teams that each site has, and Elaine was referencing Brittany, who was the coach that worked with Elaine and her implementation team over the course of their involvement in the Laser TLC. So the next thing I think I'd like you to share a little bit about is sort of concrete changes that you saw resulting from your participation in the learning community. And Bianca, again, why don't you go first and talk about some of the really concrete, tangible things that resulted from your active involvement.
Yeah, absolutely. I should say we had the opportunity to work with both Ella and John, and I think throughout the experience, I think the biggest thing that I saw from just a leadership perspective was the confidence of my team just grow, and also our capability to be able to do the work. You know, our goals going into doing this work were really surrounded around how can we build the capacity to do it? How do we learn some of the skills that we need to be able to do the work? We had a really fortunate opportunity prior to joining the laser community where we completed some technical assistance with OFA, and we were able to convene some of our community partners to learn about some of the challenges that we were having with our TANF program. You know, we had quite a large reduction since 2009 at that point in caseload size. Our caseload decreased 43%, and we really wanted to understand, you know, how and why and what we could do differently within our program. So prior to arriving, you know, to the laser community, we had a lot of really great information, but we didn't really understand, okay, now what do we do with it? And the laser community gave us the opportunity to say, okay, how do we go back and how do we tackle this? And I love Ella saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Like, that is my favorite saying, and I say it all the time now going forward, because it's true. We were faced with a lot of information, a lot of ideas and thoughts, and we really had to figure out how to prioritize that work. So in the laser community itself, a couple of the things that we had the opportunity to do was reconvene our community partners and really get a chance to speak with them and learn from them about, you know, how we should begin to prioritize the work. And I don't know if we anticipated this result, but we had a really, it was like the synergy and everything of the moment, right? We had this really great opportunity where we were able to draw from the feedback and pull forward some really key elements for our program. And those are really how we are going to start to look at what TANF looks like for our state going forward. And even better, it came from our community partners. It came from the work that we did in a collaborative nature. I have them listed here, so I was just going to read them off really quickly because I think it's really cool. You know, some of the elements that we defined were making sure that we're able to create meaningful experience for families, redefine the customer and staff relationship, provide simplified stress-free customer experiences, deliver a robust package of benefits to families, build core capabilities of families, and strengthen education and training services. So I really do value that opportunity that we had because we were able to draw out some really meaningful work. The other thing that I will say is that we had opportunities for learning, the connections and the networking that we had. We had an opportunity to hear from Louisiana in our environmental scan that we conducted. We had identified that we needed to increase our benefits, right? Recipients weren't, or individuals weren't receiving enough to make ends meet. So we learned from Louisiana some of the things that they were doing to increase their standard of need and to help people get more resources to be able to achieve their goals. We also had a chance to meet with representatives from the Center on Budget and Policy to learn a little bit about what other states are doing when it comes to the standard of needs. So overall, really great experiences. And I really credit, the support that we had from our coaches, from our team, to have the opportunities to be able to do this.
Thank you, Bianca. And Elaine, share with us some of the concrete changes within your community that resulted from your active engagement and participation in the previous learning community.
I really have to thank Brittany, Ella, Rianne, and the others who helped us in this project. Their patience and being able to draw out our goals and work with us and guide us towards our goals and the concrete changes that we came up with. Some of those changes are, we may think they're common sense, but sometimes we just don't address them in our daily work. But some of those is having our staff meetings and using the overhead to see what we did last week, so we can see visually just what we did last week. So it brings us up to date on what it is that we need to do today and then plan for next week. So that's one of the biggest advantages that the biggest tools that one of the bigger tools that we learned. And so we use that overhead to do our staff minutes as a reminder, to our staff, well, this is where we're at. So it's a good visual in those minutes and are stored in our shared drive so everybody can go back and refer to them. The other one is collaborating in a more meaningful way and also using a spreadsheet with our social services department in staffing some of those cases that we all have learned to collaborate on in a systematic way. And that's one of the biggest one of the biggest changes I think that we've all benefiting from is knowing where we're at in these families and each week and say, well, this is what's happening with this family. So this is what I'll do this week. And then so it's on the overhead again. And then next week we come back and say, well, this is what I did. And this is where the family is at, which is really crucial, in following, because we're working with the most at-risk families. And so, we had to go back and remind the department that we have to do this, in order to better serve our families and especially the children, because they are in these environments and we want to make sure that we do the best that we can for them. So it's another area is recognizing that staff need time, in order to finish their work sometimes. So we were able to address that. So because there's so much paperwork in TANF. So we address that to allow them a day just to do what they need to do for their paperwork. Another more efficient way of tracking and storing documents, because everything has to be in that case file, and being able to do reports and say, well, this is what we're missing. And so we have to have these complete and get ready for the annual audit. So our files are complete and so we don't have any any findings, because that's one of our main areas that we're always looking at. But also, so I really like the goals ladder. We're able to use a goals ladder to say, this is where we're at, this is what we need to do, these are the outcomes. That is one of the tools that I really like, and because I'm always wanting to say, well, show the tribal council, these are the goals. This is what we're here for, these are our jobs. I can tell you that this is what we've done, and these are our goals. And I know that we have to work a different way, work a little bit, a better way, not harder. We work so hard already, but in a more meaningful way, more systematic way, so that we could reach those outcomes. And so, I could say, well, our program is effective. So, it's really been insightful journey.
Thank you both. And I think what you're hearing is very different levels of change based upon where each participant was, but nevertheless meaningful and significant to making progress in a tribal community with tribal programs in a state system. Last thing before we move on to the Q&A section of the interest webinar is I'd like you to share a tip or two to those on the call who might be on the interest webinar, who might be thinking about joining. And Elaine, I'd like you to go first. And if you have for representatives from tribes and tribal communities who are on the call, if you have a tip or a suggestion for them to think about, one or two, as they think about moving forward with submitting a self-nomination and becoming a part of the fast learning community. A tip or two for tribal communities, Elaine?
From the experience that I have with this is it's important to start talking to the staff and having a commitment from them, and then we did a professional development plan, an action plan that I went to the council to get approval on, and let them know this is what we're doing. And the other tip would be to have and what our team supporters did is they did a timeline. This is what we're going to do for the year. And so, specifically we had dates set up, the times set up. And so everybody knew exactly what to expect. The simple outline for each staff meeting or staff lesson that we're going to do that day. So we can zero in on what happened to we're going to do for that time period. But the timeline is really important. That's, and then what we expect to learn from this, what we're going to do at the end of the year. And what we did, we asked for a journey map, so we can use that as a visual and let everybody know this is what we did. This is where we're at in each step of the way. This is what we did. And at the end and this is what we did. And this is where we would have to work on sustaining our journey map.
Thank you, Elaine, for sharing those tips and how important those organizational devices were. And tips to other folks is they'll have the opportunity to make use of those also for their own planning and implementation purposes. Bianca, a tip or two for states that are on the call and might be entertaining the idea of joining.
Yeah, I would definitely echo like everything that Elaine said, because I think that's true for states as well, right? We want to make sure that you've got the commitment, the participation, the willingness to be at the table and to take the time out. It's definitely a commitment. When you say that you're going to take on this work and this project, and I think that you've got the opportunity to have the right supports along with you. So I would fully and wholeheartedly say that we would absolutely do this again 10 times over. Such a great experience, but it did take time out of our day-to-day schedule. So really understanding who's going to be responsible for what and who's going to be a part of the team. The other thing that I would say is be willing to go into a situation and connect with others and learn. I think that the most valuable experiences that I had is when we were learning from other states and from each other. And I think it's easy for us because we're in a virtual world where we're not necessarily always willing to connect as easily, but throw your camera on, hold a conversation, get to know more from one another, because I think that that's how you're going to really truly understand that you're not alone in this process. It's big, it's heavy work, and the more people that you have to support you through it, the better.
Well, thanks again. And Elaine and Bianca, thank you so much for taking a little bit of time to share with folks on this call about what you learned and what you accomplished and what you feel improved and what's different now as a result of your involvement, and some ideas to share about with others who are thinking about. So let's now, again, thanks so much, Bianca and Elaine. Let's shift to the next portion of the interest webinar. Next slide, please. So questions, I see there, I haven't been able to monitor it that closely. But before I go into the, yeah.
Oh, this is Jeanette. There have been several questions about specific about looking at factors for gauging readiness and several other about the nomination review process. So I asked Casey Gray to please, this is the email that you can get the entire nomination package and the FAQs from. But I've also asked her to put it up in the in the chat, Mark, so that people can write it down or have it right now.
Right. So thank you, Jeanette. And yes, you see the TANF-CW Learning Community at BLH Tech. That is where you can request the nomination materials that be sent to you. Again, it's due about a month from today. And you can also use that email portal that's up there to ask questions. So if, let's say you get the nomination package and you read it and you have a question or two about something, certainly feel free to access the portal, write your question, send your question to the portal, and we will respond as quickly as possible. Again, we want to make the self-nomination process as easy as possible for folks that are thinking about participating in the FAST-LC. Casey Gray, do you want to mention about the recording and where folks would be able to access this interest webinar if they want to share it with other staff?
Sure, Mark. Hi, everyone. I will be sending this recording off for 508, and then we are going to get it up publicly posted as soon as we possibly can. And we can send that email link out to everyone who registered.
Thank you. John, in your perusal of the questions, was there anything that you saw that would be important for us to respond to at this time?
And I do want to open it up also. Lisa may have
Correct.
Lisa may have some perspective on some of these answers, but yeah, go ahead, John.
Yeah, would OFA feel free to chime in on some of these. There was a question about whether partners from other state level sister agencies could be part of the implementation team in addition to TANF and child welfare. And I think the answer to that is absolutely yes. Like, we encourage that type of collaboration, and whether they're part of the core team or maybe part of kind of that secondary team that you're collaborating with is probably going to depend on the type of plan that you put together and how intensively they would be involved.
Is that square, OFA? Is that correct? Anything else you'd want to add to that, NCB?
No, all of our learning communities, we encourage the team to make it their own. And with that, you'll develop your own objectives within the framework of the learning community. And with that, you will also select team members that will help you accomplish your goals. So we encourage you to pick a team, whether it's a core team, like John said, or a larger one that will help you accomplish your goals, and we will support that.
And
Thank
Mark,
you.
I also saw a question in here about info on what we're looking to see in the vision plan, just an acknowledgement that that is laid out very detailed in the nomination guidance. In short, it's really about your vision and goal. It's about kind of your readiness for change, which relates to your organizational capacity and your motivation. And it's about the team. Who are you bringing to the table and why? So in short, that's kind of what that 3-page plan would cover.
And again, it's spelled out in the nomination guidance and instruction you will receive. And again, if you have any questions after you read that or need additional clarification, feel free to send an email to the portal address and we will respond. Anything else, John, that you saw that we ought to sort of respond to at this point?
There were a couple of questions about who can submit the self-nomination. So I'd love for OFA and CB to chime in on that. One is, does it matter which agency, presumably TANF or Child Welfare, submits the nomination? So Lisa, do you want to address that?
Yes, we are looking for the TANF agency to submit the nomination package with a signature or some verification that they have partnered with the Children's Bureau, Child Welfare Partner.
Great. And then a somewhat related question is, can the learning community be local only, or does it need to be at the state level? Again, I'll let you weigh in on that, Lisa.
Yes, it does have to be at the state level, but we have worked with counties where a state person was on the team, but most of the work took place in the county. So we are looking for a state level commitment, but the delegation of the activities can be at a county level or local level. I know all states are a little different.
Right. Great, thank you. And I
Thank
think the only other one I saw, Mark, was, oh no, there were two others. One is, what if I am the only leading party to promote this? So that's a good question, right? Let's say you're one side of the house or the other, how to approach that. Does OFA or CB want to weigh in on that?
So I think healthier. If you're, so that's, so we need a partnership between TANF and Child Welfare. If at the time that the nominations are due, you have not cemented your partnership, we always have the peer TA network where you can, the TANF agency can request TA. So you won't be a part of the learning community, but you can request TA to help you develop an action plan through a similar process.
And I think there's one more question, John.
Yes, I believe Carrie asked, where can we find information on successful child welfare and TANF innovations or efforts and best practices from past learning communities? Jeanette, do you want to address that?
Sure. Well, we have some, I actually think that there's some work in both CB and OFA, and both on the OFA peer TA network as well. I know at Allison is at the Capacity Building Center for States that you have potentially a lot of good information about partnerships between child welfare and TANF and some of the innovations in the field. Partly, the past learning communities have not been specifically about TANF and child welfare partnership. So we don't have that about that partnership. Elaine and Bianca were talking about their programs and not specifically this partnership. So we do hope, though, we have learned that there are a variety of different innovations and new programs and models that are out there around the country, and we will bring those to bear for those that are in the learning community. And once we're done with our 12 months, we hope to have a report out about some of these best practices and promising practices, not only that we brought to bear as part of the learning community, but also the work of the sites, the 10 sites that participated in it. Allison, I know that you have several programs though there that might be able to be a place to point to this person, where to carry about where to go.
I think the capacity building centers information is where most things are housed, and we can definitely get a little bit more specific information.
Okay. Lisa, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I didn't. Chapin Hall, if they do, I guess do a Google search on Chapin Hall, they have a lot of research on child welfare and TANF and child welfare, might find some information there. But we, OFA, don't have anything at this time. But we're looking, we think we want that to be one of the products from this learning community, the ability to document the team's process and be able to share with the field. But at this time, no, we don't have anything.
There was a question that's come in about in the tribal context. One of the participants in the interest webinar asked if there's been any thought given to allowing tribal organizations that are operating for and/or ICWA programs who may be running both TANF and child welfare. What is their sort of ability to participate in the FAST-LC? And Lisa, thoughts on that?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
Yeah, my apologies. Not a tribe, but a tribal organization. Could be a consortium organization, could be an urban tribal organization, lots of different settings. But where a tribal organization, not a specific tribe, would be able to submit a self-nomination and participate. Better? Clear?
So yeah, a TANF program. So a tribal TANF program that is part of a tribal organization or under a tribal organization could participate. But a tribal program must submit the nomination. A TANF program must submit the nomination, whether it's tribal or state.
Okay. And there was another question and about sort of an issue about the whole issue of exposure and visibility bias for families as it relates to child welfare and TANF, and the extent or degree to which the FAST-LC will be sensitive to that and respond appropriately to that. Any responses to that question? Exposure.
So I do not. Oh, sorry, Mark.
Okay.
I do not have an answer at this time, but we can look into that. Allison, do you have?
Oh, I think it's an important question, but I think we can look into that as well.
You know, that's a great thank you. And so I also want to let people know is that we have developed an FAQ, a frequently asked question document. And based upon this question, we will make sure that that FAQ is amended once we have an appropriate and official response to this particular question. Okay, so it will be addressed and it will be included in the FAQ document that everyone who's interested in participating or moving towards submitting a self-nomination will have access to. Okay, I think we've.
There was one more, Mark. Yeah, just very quickly, can the nomination be submitted by the state secretary's office? Right. I believe the answer to that is yes. Correct, Lisa?
Yes. If assuming that they are responsible for the TANF program.
Perfect. Right. So got to have authority and responsibility for it. Great. Sorry.
Some secretaries or commissioners may be responsible for TANF and child welfare under their umbrella, and that would make sense for them to submit the applications since they're authorized, the authority for both programs. So that would be okay.
Mhm.
Great. Thank you again, and hopefully we've been responsive to the questions, and we will, just to let folks know, we will go through the questions again to make sure that if there's one we may have missed, we will include the response to that in a modified FAQ based upon the exchange and the conversation, the questions raised during this interest webinar. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Jeanette, and at this moment, okay?
Yeah, that's great. And again, as Lisa pointed out, though, if the two offices of child welfare and TANF are in different agencies, we do need that joint letter signed as part of the application, or I'm sorry, as part of the self-nomination process. And again, this is the email. You can, if you think of another question, if you can write here and you can ask for the whole nomination package and it will be sent directly to you. As soon as this recording is available, it will be, as I said, it will be there as a linkage that you can download and share. But that if you have questions after you read the nomination documentation, please don't hesitate to post a question. This is being monitored hourly so that we can answer questions as quickly as possible. Again, the due date for this is September 7th by 6 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And I think there's a few more questions that just came in. Oh, those are just saying goodbye. Okay. So, but please don't hesitate to ask a question, or if you get the FAQ and something is not there, please send us a note and let us know.
Lisa or Allison, I guess, any closing comments?
Well, I want to thank everyone for coming and for the wonderful questions that were asked. And I look forward to maybe meeting some of you at the National TANF meeting in Long Beach, or seeing your nominations in the beginning of September. So thank you, and we'll be chatting later. Allison?
So I'll echo all of that, and just thank all of our colleagues across the country for participating, and again in advance for all the work that's going to come out of this. It's really exciting, and we're really looking forward to seeing things. Thank you.
Thank you both. And Jeanette, any final words as we wrap up the interest webinar?
Thank you. Thanks, Mark.
Mark,
Nope.
I just want to thank you and Jeanette and John and Casey Gray for all your hard work in pulling this together. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.